I remember the exact moment the true silence came back to me. It wasn't the absence of sound, but the presence of stillness inside, a quiet hum in my bones that had been missing for so long. For years, I'd been living with a constant, low-frequency hum of anxiety, a dissonant chord struck deep in my chest. Denver was home, the mountains my sanctuary, and guiding people through their wild beauty was more than a job. It was my purpose, my breath. I thrived on the sharp bite of alpine air, the rhythm of boots on a trail, the moment someone's eyes widened seeing a view they never thought they'd reach. I built my life around self-sufficiency, around the quiet power of connection with nature, with the small, authentic truths of existence. I thought my compass was true, unyielding. Turns out, it just needed recalibrating. It began with Renee. I met her at a climbing gym, of all places. She was sleek, city sharp, with a laugh that tumbled out like loose change and eyes that seemed to hold a dozen unspoken promises. I was instantly drawn to her vivacity, her unapologetic ambition. She worked in marketing, a world away from my dirt under the fingernails reality, but she claimed to be captivated by my stories of the backcountry, by the calm strength she said I exuded. She'd listen intently, perched on the edge of a bar stool, a designer cocktail in her hand, as I recounted tales of guiding expeditions, of nights spent under a canvas of a billion stars. I was a novelty to her. I think, a breath of fresh air from the polished corporate types she usually dated. And I, a man accustomed to the solitude of the wilderness, found her attention intoxicating, a bright, sparkling contrast to my usual quiet existence. I remember thinking she was the missing piece, someone to share the warmth of a fire with after a long day, someone to bring a different kind of light into my world. There were whispers, right from the start. Little jokes about my rough hands, my practical wardrobe, the scruff on my face. She'd say, "Ben, you're so charmingly rustic." Or, "Couldn't you just once wear something without a zipper pocket?" I'd laugh it off, attributing it to her city sensibilities. She was just playful, I told myself. She didn't understand. My best friend and business partner, Tony, an equally bearded, equally passionate outdoorsman, initially found her amusing. He even joked she'd bring some much-needed sophistication to our wilderness retreat, a dream we'd been building together since college. We envisioned a place where people could genuinely disconnect, learn survival skills, find peace. Renee, however, had other ideas, subtly couched in what she called constructive feedback. Why did our cabins need to be so simple? Couldn't we offer better wine? Nicer linens? It felt like tiny pinpricks at first, easy to ignore. The truth was, I was just so glad to have her. The pinpricks began to accumulate, becoming a constant, low-grade irritation under my skin. Our conversations would inevitably circle back to my career, or rather, what she perceived as its deficiencies. "You're 32, Ben," she'd say, her voice soft but with an edge that could cut. "Don't you ever think about, real money? A career with upward mobility? I mean, guiding is great for a season, but..." She'd let the thought hang in the air, a silent judgment that settled heavy in my gut. I try to explain my passion, the deep satisfaction of helping someone conquer a fear or discover a new part of themselves in the wild. She'd nod, a placid smile on her face, but her eyes would hold a look of polite condescension, like I was a child clinging to a fantasy. Soon, her critiques extended to everything. My truck was too old, too practical. Our little house, nestled on the outskirts of Denver, wasn't aspirational enough. My refusal to buy designer clothes was stubborn. Slowly, insidiously, I began to internalize her judgments. I started looking at my life through her eyes, and suddenly, the things I loved felt small, unambitious, immature, even. I'd catch myself scanning job boards for corporate development roles, my heart sinking with each click. My adventurous spirit, my drive for self-sufficiency, started to feel like a childish refusal to grow up. The compass I relied on, the one that pointed true north to my values, began to waver, its needle fluttering erratically in the magnetic field of her disapproval. Tony, initially a steadfast ally, started to bend. Renee had a way of charming everyone, especially when she wanted something. She'd invite him to fancy dinners, talk business strategy, make him feel like he was part of something bigger. I watched, a knot forming in my stomach. as he began to parrot her ideas. You know, Ben, he'd say, leaning back in his chair during one of our planning meetings for the retreat expansion, Renee made a good point. Maybe we do need to think about corporate partnerships. Attract a different clientele. You know, glamping could be huge. My stomach clenched. Glamping? Our retreat was about stripping away artifice, not adding more of it. Tony, we built this place to be an escape from all that. I'd argue, my voice tight. Authenticity, not luxury, is our selling point. He'd shrug, looking vaguely uncomfortable. Yeah, I get that. But authenticity doesn't pay the bills like corporate retreats do. Renee knows some people. High rollers. She says they're looking for unique experiences with a rustic chic twist. Rustic chic. The words felt like sandpaper on my soul. My old friend, my partner, was using Renee's marketing jargon. I felt a chill run through me. It wasn't just Renee anymore. It was Tony too. I was being outvoted in my own dream, slowly but surely. The psychological pressure mounted, leaving me feeling isolated, confused, and increasingly resentful, yet too afraid to confront the source of the discomfort directly. I still loved Renee, or at least the idea of who she was, the bright spark I thought she could be for me. Then came the moment, sharp and chilling, that sliced through my complacency. We were working on the pitch for our retreat's expansion, a vital step for securing the capital we needed. I had poured my heart and soul into the proposal, detailing our vision for sustainable ecotourism, community engagement, and genuine wilderness immersion. I believed in it, in us. Tony and I were supposed to present it to a potential investor, a local venture capitalist known for backing outdoor-focused businesses. I walked into the conference room, my worn backpack slung over my shoulder, the scent of pine still clinging to my jacket from an early morning hike. Renee was there, sitting at the head of the polished oak table, impeccably dressed, a knowing smile playing on her lips. My heart lurched. Renee? What are you doing here? I asked, confusion warring with a prickle of unease. Oh, darling, she said, her voice dripping with an almost saccharine sweetness. Tony asked me to come. You know, to lend a little corporate polish. She gestured vaguely at my flannel shirt. My gut tightened. I tried to shake it off, to focus on my pitch. I launched into it, talking about the land, the wildlife, the transformative power of nature, my voice filled with genuine passion. I saw the investor, a stern-faced man named Mr. Harrison, nod occasionally, seemingly engaged. But then Renee started to interject. Ben, sweetie, perhaps less about the spiritual journey and more about the ROI? She cut in, her tone light, but the message brutal. Mr. Harrison doesn't need to hear about hugging trees. Do you, sir? She winked at him. A small, embarrassed laugh escaped Mr. Harrison. My cheeks burned. I tried to regain my footing, explaining the long-term sustainability model, the low ecological footprint. This isn't just about profit, I emphasized. It's about preserving these spaces, about responsible tourism. Renee scoffed softly. Responsible tourism? Ben, darling, this is a business venture, not a charity. Your vision, while charmingly idealistic, is a bit of a childish fantasy in the real world. She said, childish fantasy, with a slow, deliberate enunciation, her gaze fixed on mine, daring me to challenge her. It felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. This wasn't playful teasing anymore. This was an open assault on my core beliefs, my life's work, in front of a crucial potential investor. And then Tony began his presentation. My blood ran cold as he unfurled a new set of slides. Gone were my carefully crafted proposals for minimal impact structures and educational programs. In their place were glossy renderings of luxury ecopods, wellness spas, and corporate team-building facilities. He spoke of strategic partnerships and maximizing shareholder value. He outlined a development plan that completely sidelined my original vision, morphing our beloved wilderness retreat into a high-end, commercialized resort. My face, my name, my ethos, they were nowhere in his presentation. This new direction, Tony announced, looking directly at Mr. Harrison, is a collaboration with Renee's contacts, who have shown immense interest in a rapid, high-yield expansion. It's what's best for the future, for the long-term viability. I stared at him, my mouth agape. Long-term viability? This was a complete betrayal. He had sold me out, sold us out. He had taken our shared dream, the very bedrock of our friendship and partnership, and twisted it into something unrecognizable, something Renee wanted. I looked at Renee, who offered me a cool, almost triumphant smile. It was then I saw it, truly saw it, for the first time. The calculated manipulation, the deliberate erosion of my self-worth, the systematic dismantling of my life. My compass didn't just waver, it shattered into 1,000 pieces. My hands began to tremble, a cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. The room felt suddenly suffocating. The air thick with unspoken agreements and my own crushing defeat. The world went blurry after that meeting. I don't remember much of the drive home, just a pounding headache and a metallic taste in my mouth. I felt hollowed out, like someone had reached in and scooped out my insides. My vision, my passion, my very identity as an outdoorsman and guide. Renee had systematically mocked it, and Tony, my closest friend, had helped her dismantle it. The betrayal was a physical ache, a dull throb behind my eyes that wouldn't subside. I walked into our house, the one Renee considered unambitious, and collapsed onto the couch. I tried to talk to her that night, to understand how she could have done that, how Tony could have stood by and let it happen. She was dismissive, almost amused. Ben, don't be so dramatic. It's business. You just don't understand the real world. You're too sensitive. Tony gets it. He's thinking big picture. She even tried to put her arm around me, a gesture I recoiled from as if burned. Her words were like acid, dissolving any last vestiges of affection I had for her, exposing the raw wound of my own foolishness. For days, I walked around in a fog, the silence in my house now a heavy, oppressive thing. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep properly. My thoughts spun in endless, tormented circles. Was I really so naive? So out of touch? Had my life truly been a childish fantasy? The self-doubt she had so carefully cultivated bloomed into full-blown self-loathing. I felt like a failure, a broken man who had allowed himself to be led astray, his compass pointing nowhere. One morning, I stood by the window, watching the sunrise paint the mountains in hues of pink and gold. It was a familiar sight, one that usually brought me immense peace. But now, it just felt distant, like a beautiful painting I could no longer touch. And then, something shifted. A tiny spark, deep inside the wreckage. I looked at my reflection in the glass, gaunt, haunted, and I suddenly saw not just the victim, but the man who had let this happen. The man who had dismissed the red flags, who had allowed his dreams to be belittled, who had trusted someone who clearly didn't understand him, didn't value him. The awakening was not a sudden explosion of anger, but a slow, quiet dawn. It was the dawning realization that the pain wasn't just about the lost retreat, it was about the lost me. The Ben who loved the mountains unconditionally, who found strength in simplicity, who knew his worth. I had allowed Renee to redefine me, to shrink my world to fit her narrow, materialistic expectations. The anger, when it came, wasn't wild, but cold and resolute. It was anger at myself, yes, but also a fierce, protective anger for the person I used to be, the person I still was, buried under layers of self-doubt. I called Tony. His voice was strained. He tried to explain, to justify. Ben, it's for the best. Seriously, this developer, they're big. It's a huge opportunity. An opportunity for whom, Tony? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Because it's not for me. Not for the vision we shared. He mumbled something about growing up, about being realistic. Realistic? I cut him off. Realistic is building something honest, something true. This is just selling out, plain and simple. I told him I was out. I would sell my share. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about severing the ties, cutting the cancer out of my life. The conversation was brief, devoid of the camaraderie that had defined our friendship for years. The ache of that loss was profound, but it was overshadowed by a burgeoning sense of liberation. Breaking up with Renee was less dramatic than I expected. When I told her, she looked almost bored. Fine, she said, shrugging. If you're going to be this difficult. Honestly, Ben, you're just not ambitious enough for me. We want different things. Her words, once so devastating, now felt like distant echoes, hollow and meaningless. I realized she hadn't really seen me, not the real me, ever. She had seen a project, something to mold, something to fit into her curated life. And I had been too blind, too desperate for affection, to see her for what she was, a relentless architect of her own desires, regardless of the cost to others. I packed a single duffel bag, leaving behind everything that felt tainted by her presence, by that suffocating period of my life. With the sale of my share finalized, a surprising weight lifted. It wasn't relief, not yet, but a strange lightness, a sense of having shed a heavy burden. I bought a new backpack, lighter, tougher, better equipped. My old compass, the literal one, still worked, but I needed to find my internal one again. My first step towards healing was to disappear. I drove west, leaving the city behind, leaving the ghosts of Renee and Tony and the lost retreat in my rearview mirror. I hiked the John Muir Trail, a legendary trek through the Sierra Nevada, alone. The wilderness was my confessional, my therapist, my church. Days blurred into a rhythm of walking, breathing, eating, sleeping under the stars. My body, initially heavy with emotional fatigue, slowly found its strength again. My mind, once a chaotic storm of recrimination and doubt, began to quiet. Each sunrise brought a fresh perspective, each strenuous climb a renewed sense of accomplishment. I reconnected with the primal satisfaction of self-sufficiency. I made fires, filtered water, navigated by instinct and the sun. I spoke aloud to the towering sequoias, whispering my hurts, my fears, my foolishness into the rustling leaves. And slowly, they began to answer, not with words, but with the profound, quiet understanding of nature. Out there, amidst the granite peaks and roaring rivers, I remembered who Benjamin was. Not the man Renee tried to make me, but the man who found profound joy in a single wildflower, in the call of a hawk circling overhead, in the resilience of my own 2 feet carrying me forward. My compass, shattered just months before, began to reassemble itself, piece by painstaking piece, its needle settling steadily on true north. It pointed to authenticity, to connection, to the simple, undeniable truth of my passion. I didn't rush back to Denver. I spent a season working as a trail maintainer, the hard physical labor a balm for my soul. I learned to trust my instincts again, to listen to the subtle cues of the forest, to the quiet wisdom within myself. When I finally returned, it wasn't to reclaim my old life, but to build a new one. I started a small, ethical guiding service, just me and a few trusted, like-minded guides. We focus on genuine wilderness experiences, on teaching sustainable practices, on connecting people with the earth without commercializing the soul out of it. We take small groups, leave no trace, and prioritize the experience over the amenities. My cabins are simple, my gear is practical, and my hands are still rough. But now, they feel strong, capable. The quiet hum in my bones is back, a harmonious chord, steady and true. I still see Tony sometimes, from a distance, usually in a sleek car, heading to some corporate function. I hear whispers of the luxury retreat, doing well, of its rapid expansion. I feel a pang, a residual ache for what could have been, for the friendship lost, for the dream twisted. It's bittersweet, a scar that reminds me of the depth of the wound. But then I look at my small group of hikers, their faces alight with awe as they crest a ridge and behold the vast expanse of the Rockies. I see the genuine wonder in their eyes, the peace settling on their faces. And I know, with absolute certainty, that I made the right choice. My compass is unbroken now, pointing always towards the wild, towards my true self. I found my way home, not to a place, but to myself. And that, I've learned, is the greatest adventure of all.